tell the congregation. Will the congregation please stand as you are able? Eternal Spirit, Earthmaker, Pain-bearer, Life-giver, Source of all that is and that shall be, Father and Mother of us all, loving God, in whom is heaven. The hallowing of your name echo throughout the universe. The way of your justice be followed by the peoples of the world. Your heavenly will be done by all created beings. Your commonwealth of peace and freedom sustain our hope and come on earth. With the bread we need for today, feed us. In the hurts we absorb from one another, forgive us. In times of temptation and test, strengthen us from trials too great to endure. Spare us from the grip of all that is evil. Free us. For you reign in the glory of the power that is love, now and forever. Amen. God dwells in you. Let us pray. O God of grace and glory, we remember before you this day our sister Kathleen. We thank you for giving her to us, her family and friends, to know and to love as a companion on our earthly pilgrimage. In your boundless compassion, console us who mourn. Give us faith to see in death some beautiful mystery, so that in quiet confidence we may continue our course on earth and in our hearts be reunited with those who have gone before. Amen. Please be seated.
Aunque hablara la lengua de los hombres y de los ángeles, si no tengo amor, soy como campana que suena o platillo que retumba. Y aunque tuviera el don de hablar de parte de Dios y conociere todos los misterios y toda la ciencia, si aún mi fe fuera tan grande como para trasladar montañas, si no tengo amor, nada soy. Y aunque repartiera todos mis bienes a los pobres y entregara mi cuerpo a las llamas, si no tengo amor, de nada me sirve. El amor nunca pasará, terminará el don de hablar de parte de Dios, cesará el don de expresarse en un lenguaje misterioso y desaparecerá también el don del conocimiento profundo, porque ahora conocemos de modo imperfecto lo mismo que es imperfecta nuestra capacidad de hablar de Dios, pero cuando venga lo perfecto, desaparecerá lo imperfecto. Cuando yo era niño, hablaba como niño, pensaba como niño, razonaba como niño. Al hacerme hombre, he dejado las cosas de niño. Ahora vemos por medio de un espejo y oscuramente, pero un día veremos cara a cara. Ahora conozco imperfectamente, pero un día conoceré plenamente como Dios mismo me conoce. Ahora permanecen estas tres cosas: la fe, la esperanza, el amor, pero lo más excelente de todas es el amor.
My first memories are of my sisters raising me, doing chores, learning poetry. They nurtured and terrorized me as older siblings are supposed to. I remember leaping into the 12-foot Olympic-sized pool in Webster Groves, and they were there waiting for me. I was pretty scared, but I jumped because I knew they were going to catch me. Kathleen had a fierceness about her. She was tenacious, she was kind, gracious. She did things with such passion. Her appetite for learning in life was enormous. When she set her sights on a goal, binder in hand, finished project in mind, she committed to the undertaking. It was unwavering. She loved Samoyeds, polar bears, whales, and Dorothy Dunnett books. She loved to travel, meet new people, hear friends' stories. Kathleen was always joining group activities, not because she couldn't achieve the goals she set for herself alone, but because she valued the friendships they engendered. Her home in Mexico was her dream of a place where people could feed their souls, a place to be safe, valued, loved, and where the community of other people was of the utmost priority. Her dream for the community of La Misión was to help the residents become fully independent and have the opportunity to live in peace, to have their own resources, to be connected, and have control over their bodies and lives. When we were all at very vulnerable ages, our family had a rather significant trauma, and it fractured the dynamics and cohesiveness that as a family we never recovered. When we became mothers ourselves, we hoped that our children would become one family and stand by each other. Please honor her wish because she loved you so much.
I first encountered Kathleen when I developed a deep friendship with Jim in the campus of UC Santa Cruz. Jim and I were colleagues. We played squash. Kathleen was working on her psychology degree, and Alicia was 2 or 3 years old and simply precious, described by her father as Pumpkin. It was enormously touching to see the bonds between the three of them, and Kathleen and I cooked together. We would plan our lives, cook meals, and discuss politics and spirituality, and it truly enriched me and carried me through many crises of my own life. They went on to Australia. Kathleen returned, and I saw them at Stony Brook, and we constantly were able to engage and never losing a stitch, debating values. And what impressed me so much about Kathleen is her ability to deal with social justice in La Misión, in this community here, her engagement with the Latino community, and always embracing and building and nurturing her family. The great gifts she gives us are her children and grandchildren who spiritually carry her vision that I learn. They are the gifts, and I thank her for them.
This is a poem about prompts to memory of the departed. There are stars above, so far away we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though the time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the light that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember.
At the rising of the sun and at its going down, we will remember Kathleen. At the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. At the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. At the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer, we will remember her. At the rustling of the leaves and the beauty of autumn, we will remember her. At the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. As long as we live, she too will live, for she is now a part of us as we remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember her. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember her. When we have joy we crave to share, we remember her. When we have decisions that are difficult to make, we remember her. When we have achievements that are based on hers, we remember her. As long as we live, she too will live, for she is now a part of us as we remember her.
With you, you guys out there, but I'm in Richmond, Virginia, where I live, and but in the 70s, I lived in Stony Brook, New York, and that is where I met the Dwyers. We can't figure out quite when they arrived, but sometime in the 70s, and a lot of people were new to Stony Brook, and the Dwyers were the magnet that drew us together as a community. We were transplants, we were immigrants, but they had fabulous potluck dinners, dance parties, political discussions, rally organizing, inspiration, constant, whatever we needed at the moment seemed to emanate from the Dwyer home. And Kathleen was, she lit up the room with her vibrant beauty and her deeply felt convictions and her love of people, all kinds of people. Just loved all kinds of people. There was really no end to her generosity, and even after she and her family moved to Berlin, her spirit remained here with us. And some years after they moved from Berlin to California, I had an experience with her that I'm sure is not unusual, but was for me. I had gone through a very serious illness. I was recently divorced. I had 2 young children. I was the head of a household in a new home that was just in serious need of help. And Kathleen called me one day and she said, now listen, she said, Jim and I and the children have talked about this, and I'm coming to New York. I'm going to pack you up. I'm going to bring all of you to California. You're going to move in with us. I'm going to nurse you to health. I'm going to take care of your kids. We, I shouldn't say I, we, everything was a we. And when you're better, I'll take you back to New York. And that's what she was offering. And I was stunned. At the same time, I realized this probably wasn't the first time she had made that kind of offer, and it wouldn't be the last. It was just her and the Dwyer family. We missed her and them very much after they moved, but in some ways, she never really left us. As we say in Judaism, may her memory be for a blessing and it certainly has been.
Hi, I'm Alexis. My family and the Dwyers met in New York State when I was 5, and my sister Xana was 3. Jim and our dad worked together, and we spent lots of time together. We kids played for hours on end. There were a lot of dance parties. I'd like to talk about the importance of dance parties and music. At the time, it was Stevie Wonder, Eurythmics, Burning Down the House by the Talking Heads. Music lifts us up and brings us together and makes us bust out all of our smooth moves. Dance parties were and still are an important part of our family's friendship. As little kids, Alicia, Jessie, Xana, and I played while the grown-ups, Dad and Karen, Kathleen and Jim, and other regulars, hung out and had dance parties. Michael would join us a little bit later. To which the Dwyers brought something amazing, a strobe light. Can you imagine being 6 or 7 and being mesmerized by the flashing light? It was fantastic. There was something really beautiful about the way that our families were in community together. It taught me how families can operate and how we can show up for each other. That friends help each other with house projects, or cook together, or do community service, or debate the finer points of global economic policy and its impact on public health. It was an active way of being together, by engaging and doing things. Kathleen called my sister and me children of the house. That meant we were family, and 332 North Canyon Boulevard was a home for us. I always felt included, like I was an insider. Kathleen was the hub of a wheel with many spokes. That's what I admire most, is her ability to connect with people, to welcome us into an inner circle of caring about each other and caring about the world and caring about people we don't even know yet. Some of us here know each other and some don't, but I feel like we are all a tribe of extremely fabulous people. Since I was 5, Kathleen gave me unconditional mama love that fed my soul on a deep level. She was a human person with brilliance and talents and flaws and imperfections, like we all are, but man, I sure did get some gold. And she gave all of us the gift of her kids, Michael, Jessie, and Alicia, and the love and goodness they shine on the world. I sure feel lucky, and I sure miss Kathleen.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to read William Shakespeare's sonnet number 29, which I know was a great favourite of Kathleen's. When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art and that man's scope, with what I most enjoy, contented least. Yet in these thoughts, myself almost despising, haply I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings.
My first contact with Kathleen was sort of an indirect one. I called Jim, whom we had just hired for our research project at the Federal Health Office in Berlin, and he said, "I cannot talk to you now. My wife just got a baby." About 2 months later, I got to know Kathleen and the baby, which was Michael, as well as Alicia and Jesse, and the whole family came to Berlin. The first months were not easy. The apartment that our institution had promised them turned out to be a poor temporary solution, not exactly what you need for a family of 5, including a newborn, and all this in a very cold winter. Kathleen took it all with a mixture of fatalism, frustration, and energy, and she proved to be an organizational genius. It took some time, but finally the family got a nice apartment. Kathleen soon joined our research team, and during that time, a deep friendship developed that now includes the 2nd and the 3rd generation on the Dwyer side, and my wife Francisca on our side. What struck me about Kathleen from the very beginning was how much she was a social person, who approached people and showed interest in them. She held the family together, but also integrated others in an atmosphere characterized by warm hospitality, but also by engaged discussions about, as we say in German, God and the world, in which everyone, including kids and their friends, were taken seriously. Friendships were deepened to such an extent that beyond the core family, there's an extended family, to be part of which has always been a source of joy and pride for Francisca and myself. But Kathleen's social concerns went beyond that. The orphanage in La Mission was very close to her heart, and she put in endless hours to raise money and organize things. And the same is true for her work. The education she chose and the career she chose were not incidental, and working in public health was important for her because it had to do with people. And I remember very well how in her last years of her academic teaching, she enthusiastically went abroad with young medical students so they would learn something about the healthcare system of other countries. Needless to say, but unfortunately appropriate to mention, is that she abhorred aggression and violence from the interpersonal to the international level. Coming back to the family, I vividly remember how Kathleen and the whole family took care of Jim when he was ill. That was a hard and sad time, and many of us who are here today remember honoring Jim after he had passed away. In a saddening way, much of this repeated itself when Kathleen got ill. The family struggled, but at the same time was very supportive. I remember many conversations with Kathleen during that time. She took things very gracefully, emphasizing that she took every day as a present. And she was extremely grateful for having these kids and their partners and their children. The pandemic prevented us from coming to Monrovia, and so our last contact was a Zoom talk just shortly before she passed away. That's a sad memory, but it also entails all the love, support, and respect that we feel characterized our relationship, and we know that we're not the only ones here who feel that way. With all the sadness involved, it will be our task to keep up that spirit of mutual love, support, and respect. And the more we succeed in that, the more Kathleen's legacy will be recognized in all of it and in all of us. Thank you.
There are any number of photos of Kathleen that I love, but my favorite was taken in May of 2000 at the baptism of my older son. For reasons that I won't get into, that baptism was not at All Saints, but it speaks to Kathleen's kindness that when I asked if she would be Teo's godmother, she didn't hesitate. She didn't hesitate even though it would require her to take classes in which she'd learn to support Teo's burgeoning spiritual life in the Catholic tradition. Long story. I'd met her 6 years before here at All Saints when I got involved with the Sanctuary for Children Council, of which she was a member. Not long before, 3 young teens had been gunned down while trick-or-treating on Halloween night here in Pasadena, and All Saints was a hotbed of inspiring and inspired activity. There were a lot of educated, intelligent, and passionate people in the mix, Kathleen among them, but we all know that in a room full of smart people and forceful opinions, someone has to do more than talk. Kathleen was among those who stepped up, and she was integral to so many things that made All Saints a beacon for social justice in the 1990s, whether it was helping to develop a tutoring program at Willard School, supporting the Stand for Children efforts here and around the country, and traveling with contingents of All Saints youth and adults to Agua Verde, Mexico. In her efforts to build community inside and outside these walls, Kathleen showed us the way forward, and her metaphorically broad shoulders were strong enough for the rest of us to lean on and shelter beneath. She also showed up on Christmas Eve 2002 when my younger son Luke was chosen to be the baby Jesus here at All Saints. She held him right over here in the baptistry until it was time for his big reveal. So in addition to being an extraordinary human, a kick-ass mother and grandmother, and a treasured friend, Kathleen was also the protector and keeper of the baby Jesus. It was a role that, like all the others, she assumed with grace, love, and generosity.
Good afternoon. I know we all have our stories about encounters with Kathleen and all the Dwyers, but I want to share one that I had with her. As much as we've heard about her graciousness and her generosity and her benevolence to people, she also was a person who really liked to have a good time and liked adventures. So I'm going to tell you a quick story about one we had together. This was, I don't know, none of us can remember when things have happened. It's all, life's a blur to me now, but I think it was probably about 8 years ago. And I have a friend who has a little amateur pocket opera company here in LA. And they were going to put on a production of some Verdi opera at the Mexican restaurant at the end of the Santa Monica Pier. And it just sounded so wild. And I called Kathleen and said, do you want to go to an opera in a Mexican restaurant with me? And she said, of course I do. So off we went. And the restaurant is at the very end of the pier. And the pier was mobbed and the Ferris wheel was going. It was very noisy. And the opera company was performing while people were eating down below, but we were in the upper chamber. But the soundproofing was not very good. So these young kids and singers started, jumped in and started this powerful opera production. But all the while you could hear dishes clattering down below and waitresses saying, 2 margaritas. And so the singers would get louder and louder. And then all of a sudden, all of the lights on the pier, including the restaurant we were in, went dark. Everything went pitch dark. And Kathleen and I looked at each other, and we were sitting at a window, and you looked out, and all you could see were stars. It was so wonderful. But the whole crowd got a little nervous because nobody really knew what to do, and there was nobody saying, well, the lights will be on in a minute. So we just sat there and we started to giggle. And within, 5 or 10 minutes, the fire marshals came in with flashlights and said, okay, the party's over, but we're going to take you all back to your cars in little groups. So we trailed along with these officers, stumbling our way across the pier, the dark pier, and we just started howling, laughing. And we laughed all the way back home again. And she would often bring that little adventure up to me when we would talk, and she would always finish by saying, and wasn't that wonderful? And I would just say, it was wonderful. And you were wonderful, Kathleen, and we'll never forget you.
I met Kathleen in 2000. We had just bought our home in La Mission, and Kathleen and Jim, who had been coming down with the family for years, were also looking at buying their first home here. The property they were buying did not have the best background. It was used for smuggling drugs, hiding people from the police, and who knows what else. So before they broke ground on the property, Kathleen wanted a house blessing, or in this case, a property blessing. My husband Gary, who was a Presbyterian minister, did the blessing along with Kathleen and Jim. They walked the property with a seashell filled with water from the ocean, a candle, and a feather. All three walked the grounds, sprinkling water, holding the light of the world, and waving the feather. The Dwyer home became a place for weddings, memorial services, church gatherings, potlucks, and great parties, and the beginning of the La Mission Children's Fund. Unfortunately, Jim passed away before he could see all his home would offer to so many. A few years later, my husband Gary also passed away. But not until after the Dwyer home had become the place of our first church service for Easter in 2008. Kathleen had already started the La Mission Children's Fund, and the food bank was started in about 2009. Then we saw about 50 families. Today, we serve over 450 families each month. Kathleen's love of education had her working with Becca to help our children in school. She worked with airline ambassadors to bring down school supplies, backpacks, and other items that our children needed. Then the Children's Fund partnered with UCSD and the Jacobs School of Engineering to bring clean water, sustainable energy to our schools and orphanages. All Saints Pasadena also became a partner and has been a blessing to us ever since. The youth group from All Saints would raise money to buy the supplies for painting, for cleaning our schools, and work on the food bank. Kathleen would organize this project each year, and she loved it. The kids, sometimes up to 23 of them, would sleep all over the floor at the house, while the chaperones would draw straws to see who got a real bed. Even when Kathleen knew she might not be able to beat this cancer, she never gave up. She still held board meetings at the house, and the last time All Saints came down, she was right there on site, making sure everyone had a job, a paintbrush, or whatever else they might need to get the job done. Kathleen and I would joke about how we had walked in each other's shoes, having both lost our husbands to awful diseases, neither one having a cure. But this last journey, Kathleen told me I could no longer walk in her shoes. This journey, she would need to take alone. She asked me and the entire board to keep the work going on of the Children's Fund. I told her the food bank was and is my heart. She gave me her blessing on the very patio of the home that the three of them had blessed so many years before.
Hi, I'm Ian. Kathleen was my aunt, and this is a song I wrote about how I felt shortly before the last time I saw her. When I left you down in Joshua Tree, I thought I knew what you meant to me. I thought I knew, but then I felt it by the road in the dead of night. When I left you down in Joshua Tree, I thought I knew what I meant to you. I thought that you could tell me from another in a blinding light. Catalina, I wonder, my thoughts bring the thunder. I whisper while I wander, my feet have nothing under. And though your flow eventually will slow, a highway in the desert will always lead right home. When I left you down in Joshua Tree, I thought I knew how your mission grew. First a few, and then a coup, to feed the shadow children that called to you. And though your flow eventually will slow, a highway in the desert will always lead right home.
I'm Jean Richardson, and I met Kathleen in 1986 when Jim took a faculty position at USC in the School of Medicine. When Kathleen entered the doctoral program, she asked me to be her advisor, but I knew I was her second choice. You see, Kathleen's goal was to conduct research on heart disease with Jim, but of course, he could not be her advisor. Kathleen and I worked together on studies of cancer and substance use. We published papers together, even landing one on the front page of the LA Times as a review. We walked together at lunchtime, and we did yoga together after work. But for her dissertation, Kathleen wanted to strengthen her understanding of cardiovascular disease to eventually work with Jim. I was not an expert in that topic, and she needed to change advisors. After she earned her doctoral degree, she worked with Jim on his large epidemiologic studies. Their studies involved collecting data over several years to look at risk factors for the progression of heart disease among a multi-ethnic cohort in Los Angeles. I can remember Jim laughing and telling me once that when he first saw Kathleen as an undergraduate, he thought she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. That, I am sure, was true. We all know Kathleen was stunningly beautiful. When Jim got sick, she took care of him. She lived by her virtues to be strong, to do her best, to try hard. She loved him through it. But I also remember my last conversations with Jim. His grants were ending, and Kathleen was supported by those grants, and he was worried for her. Even as she was a physical caretaker for him, he was planning a path for her, knowing he would not be on that path with her. It was hard for Kathleen to come back to work. Her grief was deep and prolonged. But she found new ways to contribute. She began to run the practicum program for our master's degree students, and she knew how to keep a busload of graduate students in line. My colleague Lourdes will tell you more about that in a minute. Kathleen and I had offices next to each other until we both retired. When I got cancer, Kathleen visited with me during several chemo sessions. And in return, when she got sick, I took her to several doctor visits. And we came here together to All Saints Healing Services on Wednesdays. As friends, the supportive role bounced back and forth. She was full of life and humor and determination. Hers was a life well lived. Alicia, Jesse, and Michael, you are lucky to have had such a mother. She was remarkable. She was beautiful. She was fierce, and she was loving. Be proud you carry her legacy with you.
Good afternoon. I'm Lourdes Baezconde Garbanati, a colleague of Kathleen at USC since the early 90s. Kathleen and I worked together closely starting in 2010 when she became the director of the International and Domestic Practica in the Masters of Public Health program, where I was then the director of the Global Health. And we worked under Dr. Luann Rohrbach, who is actually here today. Kathleen and I traveled the world together, taking our MPH students on their Public Health International Practica. She was a remarkable and influential USC ambassador, helping to solidify important health partnerships for the university with members of the WHO or representatives from the United Nations. She was very versatile. One day, she could meet with the Minister of Health to discuss additional water trucks for a remote village. And on the next day, she would join a dengue fever public health crew to reduce mosquito infestations in Panama. Her eyes would sparkle when she talked about you, Alicia, Jesse, and Michael, and your significant others and her grandchildren. You could hear her chuckling on the back of the bus in one of our tours as she turned her phone around so we could see from a distance a picture of one of you. She beamed with pride for you and loved you so dearly. Her fearless maternal instinct kicked in during an occasion in Panama when one of our female students was being lured away from the group by a strange man. When Kathleen realized the situation, she flew from her chair to get to the student, whom she took away from the man and brought back to our group. The man followed her and confronted us. Kathleen stood tall in front of him, and believe me, she was much taller than he was. While I spoke to the man in Spanish, the rest of the students and the staff, including Rosa Barahona, who is here today, surrounded us, protecting us, and the man had no choice but to leave. We later learned that there had been a human trafficking ring in the area. When we realized the gravity of the situation, we knew that Kathleen's fearlessness had made a difference. To my husband, Jim, she was like a sister, and on trips would at times introduce themselves as sister and brother. She encouraged our son, Alex, to follow a career of his dream and to pursue his Spanish, and she did the same with so many of our students. To my beloved friend and comadre, Kathleen, you were my rock. You were my confidant. You were intellectually savvy, gifted, witty, incredibly talented, and a resourceful problem solver. You gave me the courage to do things I would have never dared to do. And you were a defender of human rights and transformed many lives. I often think about you these days of war in Ukraine and Russia, and I think you would be helping those Ukrainian refugee children and their families. At times you used to say to me one word, fuerza. You would whisper that in my ear. In Spanish, it means strength. And I leave you with that word today to remember Kathleen as we face challenges ahead. Fuerza, strength. Jean and I would like to thank you for the love that all of you gave Kathleen, and to Alicia, Jesse, and Michael, and your family. We loved your mom so deeply, and we thank you today for allowing us to speak. I miss you, my comadre. Gracias.
Hi, I'm Paige. I'm Kathleen's niece. Kathleen would tell me that she was always in my balcony, and it would be years until I understood how truly special that was. When I came out to her, there was never a second that I didn't know she was proud of me and that she loved me. Her warmth surrounded me, and when she met Carol, my wife, the same uniquely Kathleen love surrounded Carol. Carol told me recently about their first meeting, which was at my mother's house following my father's passing. Carol walked down the stairs to see the light coming through the window, shining on a spectacular woman. Kathleen was glowing with this bright white mane of beautiful hair. And she said, "Oh, darling." As she reached out for Carol's shoulder, she said, "You must be Paige's Carol. It means a lot that you are here." Kathleen then gave Carol a really big hug. Kathleen made every effort to show those in her life how special and fabulous they were to her. I would receive a call every few weeks from Kathleen. It usually lasted no more than 5 minutes, but in those 5 minutes, I knew I was so important to this extraordinary human. I received one of these calls, and fortunately, I didn't pick up. I say fortunately because my dear aunt left a message. I have this message saved on my phone, and I listen to it often. I have it labeled as Kathleen Inspiration. It's the voice of love that helps lift me up, as I know she did for all of us.
Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me dio 2 luceros que cuando los abro perfecto distingo lo negro del blanco en el alto cielo, su fondo estrellado en las multitudes al ser que gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me ha dado el oído que en todo su ancho graba noche y día, ríos y canarios, martillos y turbinas, ladridos chubascos y la voz tan tierna de mi viejo amado. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me ha dado el sonido, el abecedario, con él las palabras que pienso y declaro, madre, amigo, hermano, y luz alumbrando la ruta del alma del que estoy amando. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me ha dado la risa y me ha dado el llanto. Así yo distingo dicha de quebranto, los dos materiales que forman mi canto, el canto de ustedes, que es el mismo canto, y el canto de todos, que es mi propio canto. Gracias a la vida, gracias a la vida, gracias a la vida, gracias, gracias a la vida, a la vida.
I have the most extraordinary grandchildren in the entire world. That's the most important thing you need to know. Emilio is my eldest. Oh my gosh. I remember so clearly sitting in the waiting room with Pedro Miranda, his grandfather, we were all hoping that Emilio was going to be born before midnight because it was Pedro's birthday. And he was born. He came out just ready to take on the world. He was hanging tightly to maybe the doctor or Lisette or whatever and looking around. He was just ready to go from the time I first saw him. I've always felt like how we first see you, how you first come out is how you're going to go forward. And it's certainly true of Emilio. You've got your eyes open and you're looking around. You've got your hands ready to just take on whatever interesting, fun job is next to do. I just love the grandness of your personality and how you treat your brother and sister and your cousin. With such love and attention and trying to mentor them in how to go forward as you understand it. I'm filled with admiration for you, Emilio. And then next came Xander. Oh my. So here we are back in a waiting room, waiting for Xander to be born. And your mom, sometimes she and I would knit together. I was probably working still on Emilio's blanket because I'm very behind on getting my baby blankets out to you all. But then you were born. And oh, you're quieter and you're just looking and studying things more. And then I see Emilio not wanting any of us to touch you because you're his little brother. I love how that relationship goes and works so well for you two. Xander, I love how you are so keen on so many things. You love sports, you love mathematics, you love reading, you love so many things, you're interested in so many things. Having that curiosity is going to help you feel not only interested in the world, but it's so attractive to the rest of us as well. And then Sophia came along. It was pretty exciting. Your mom and dad love you so much. And we were waiting to see, are we going to have another boy in the family? Or are we going to have a little girl in the family? Oh my goodness, what a surprise. There you were, looking around, and I feel very privileged because I was able to be there a lot with your mom, both before she gave birth to you and then helping take care of you when we brought you home. One time, it took both your dad, your mother, and I, and you were only like a few days old, all three of us to feed you a few drops from a bottle or a dropper. I can't remember, but I was thinking, oh my goodness. Oh, but I feel so privileged to see you develop in all these fantastic ways, your ability to make songs, the lyrics, and the music up as you're singing your way through the world. And then along came Natalia. Oh my goodness, what a precious one you are, sweetie pie. Oh, I'm going to tell you one of my favorite memories. Maybe you were too. I was sitting out on the deck in Mexico, and the sun was going down. And you was maybe one of the first times you really, really wanted to come and climb up on my lap. And we sat there all cuddled in a blanket, and we looked out at the ocean, and we looked out at the birds, and we watched it get darker and the stars starting to come out. And we just sat there quietly together, just having the most beautiful, beautiful moment in time. That's one of my favorite memories of you. And that leads me to the fact that all four of you create these beautiful stories and involve each other. I see how you all care that each other are involved in the programs you're developing. It's so lovely to see that. When I think of you four, I am so happy. I'm crying, but these are tears of great joy to have my three children, to have Derek and Lisette in the family. Oh, what blessings you all are. And then you four. My goodness. Every time we do something together, I'm filled with joy. And every time I think of you, I'm filled with joy. And every time you think of me, I want you to be filled with joy. Because my love for you goes on forever. Forever. My love goes on forever for you.
I believe that at our core, there is a need for all of us to believe in superheroes. A need for all of us to believe in something bigger and stronger and more powerful than ourselves. For us to have someone that will love us, protect us, and guide us. We were fortunate enough to have two parents that had superhero qualities. My first memories of Kathleen were of her in a neck brace in extreme pain. She decided as a young woman, halfway around the world from her family of origin, to tame wild horses in the Australian outback. Kathleen thought she could take on the most formidable of opponents. Unfortunately, she lost a battle with a horse and broke her neck. However, despite the pain of being bedridden for months upon months, she read to me, she sang to me, she loved me, and she did all of the things a mother should do. Kathleen had amazing powers to bring people together. Whether the cause was educating groups of students, bringing people together to help children in Mexico, or battling the laundry and the yard work, Kathleen could rally the troops. As the eldest of 5 children, she was always mobilizing her forces to accomplish great things. With her charisma, her beauty, and her intellect, she could get almost anyone to do almost anything. Kathleen found so much joy in her family. She loved her grandchildren dearly and made strong connections with each of them. She was a huge fan of Natalia, Sophia, Xander, and Emilio's plays and musicals. She loved sharing tea and treats with her grandchildren. She was genuinely interested in what was going on in their lives and nurtured their curiosity and intellectual development. She was so proud of her children. I fondly remember when Alicia went off to an Ivy League school, how proud she was and how she celebrated each film that Michael made as if it was one of her own. I am so proud of Kathleen's life and the arc that it followed. I know that in her youth, she was a caring sister and a helpful daughter. She was a super partner in a joyful marriage. She was Dr. Kathleen Dwyer, whose work in public health has contributed to the greater good in so many ways. She was a super friend to many around the world and always made time for those she held dear. As with all great people, she met her final challenge with grace and dignity. In her final days, I remember her gathering Alicia, Michael, and myself and giving a speech as if we were in a Western movie pinned down by the enemy. In true superhero style, she did not admit defeat, but accepted that it might be inevitable. She laughingly said, "I may not make it, but I love you, and it's been a joy sharing the journey with you." As we honor the life of Kathleen, I encourage you to use your superpowers as Kathleen, to bring people together, to help those in need, but most of all, to be there for the ones you love, no matter how much pain you're in or how insurmountable your circumstances appear.
After the long isolation that has kept all of us apart through the last year of Kathleen's life, through her death a year ago, and this year of strange sea change since we lost our mother, after all of this isolation, it is with great gratitude that we greet you now. We look out at you here and far and are astounded. You have shown up in countless ways. You know who you are. We see the gifts she has given us. In the face of disease, war, distance, she brings us together here in joy, and we are strengthened. As I was thinking of these things, a bird came to sit on a wire outside my window. I've thought of her, our Catalina, with her Autobahn membership, and her clock now in our dining room, which does not keep true time, but does keep sounding 12 different bird calls at surprising times. Calls that she and the grandkids like to identify. That's the house finch. No, that's the white-breasted nuthatch. Out my window, I noticed this bird was watching over a little bird sitting on another wire not far below. They sat there, those two, in the early morning. Let us watch out for each other, as she has done for us. Let us hold the center. We miss you. We thank you. We love you, Catalina and James.
I just want to say thank you to all the musicians who have brought us their magic today. John Kirby, thank you. I want to say thank you to All Saints Church for helping this be so meaningful and incredible. Thank you. We have a reception afterwards, and we'd love to connect with all of you. Thank you.
It's beautiful. Please stand as you are able. God of life, we come in sadness to ask for comfort. Receive our grief at the loss of Kathleen, our mother, our sister, our friend, our advisor, our champion. Thank you for all she meant to us and our world, especially for her generous soul, her loving heart, and her commitment to the creation of a just and peaceful world. Thank you for her classy beauty, her decided opinions, and how she created space to welcome us all wherever she went, so that we might be known, be safe, and be challenged to grow. Thank you for her lists, spreadsheets, binders, manuals, permits, notes, and gifts of toothbrushes, chapsticks, and Mexican car insurance, so that we have been given tools for living and caring and being cared for. Thank you for her profound commitment to her work and for the hope and comfort she brought to people through it. Thank you for her perseverance in the face of loss and disappointment, for her grand dreams and fierce presence in our lives, her romantic spirit, her dance parties, and for her telephone calls to check on us. Comfort us in our sorrow at the death of one we love so deeply, Great God of all that is, we pray to you for Kathleen and for those whom we love but see no longer. Grant them eternal rest. Let light perpetual shine upon them. Amen. The peace of Christ be always with you. You may greet each other.